Right now, as you listen to this, whether you're staring at a smartphone screen, a desktop monitor, or, a tablet, your brain has subconsciously slashed your blink rate by more than 50%.
Yeah, it's actually terrifying when you realize it.
It really is. Without you even noticing, your autonomic nervous system has basically prioritized processing the visual data on that screen over the basic mechanical function of hydrating your eyes.
Right, you are actively starving your corneas of moisture.
Exactly. You're holding this tiny muscle inside your eye in a state of just sustained, agonizing tension. And you're bathing your retinas in a spectrum of artificial light that our biology just has absolutely no evolutionary context for.
It is the ultimate biological mismatch.
Hmm.
We are operating hunter-gatherer hardware in a totally alien, hyper-illuminated digital environment.
Yeah, hunter-gatherer hardware. I like that.
And the consequences of that mismatch are compounding every single second your eyes are open.
Which is wild because, we generally accept that as we get older, our vision will just inevitably decline. We treat our eyes like the brakes on a car.
Like the brake pads just wearing down over time.
Right. Eventually, the pads wear down, the vision blurs, the lenses cloud up, and you just you accept your new prescription glasses as a tax on aging. But what if that entire paradigm is just flawed?
Well, that's exactly what we're looking at today. What if the decline isn't a function of time, but actually a function of cumulative, unmitigated environmental damage?
Exactly. So today we are taking aim at that myth of inevitable visual decline. We are pulling our insights from a really fascinating session of The Ultimate Human Show, specifically episode 206, featuring human biologist and biohacker Gary Brecka.
Yeah, the material we're unpacking today, it really isn't about accepting your fate. It's a complete masterclass in the hard science of eye health, preventative care, and, extreme longevity.
And the premise here is incredibly empowering, I think.
It really is. It shifts the entire narrative away from biological surrender. The source material meticulously lays out how our visual system interacts with this modern gauntlet processed food, artificial lighting, chronic screen exposure.
All the stuff we just consider normal life now.
Right. But more importantly, it provides the exact biological levers we can pull to fight back.
And so that is our mission for this deep dive. We are extracting the cutting-edge medical treatments, the daily biohacking habits, and the heavily researched nutritional protocols from this source.
We want to give you the ultimate shortcut to taking absolute control over your visual future.
Yeah, we are talking about maintaining the ability to read, to drive at night, and to live with total independence into your 70s, 80s, and far beyond. So let's start by looking at the stakes.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we take our vision completely for granted until it's compromised.
We really do. But the source zeroes in on the quiet, insidious damage happening right now.
Well, the real danger lies in the lack of an immediate pain signal. I mean, think about it. If you strain a bicep, the pain loop is immediate.
Right. You drop the weight immediately.
Exactly. But if you expose your retina to intense oxidative stress from blue light for 12 hours a day,
Right.
there are no pain receptors in the retina to scream at you.
It's just silent.
Completely silent. The damage is this quiet accumulation of cellular debris and mitochondrial dysfunction.
Which naturally leads us to the most severe threat discussed in the text. Before we get into the daily screen fatigue, we really have to talk about the condition that actively destroys the center of your visual world. I'm talking about macular degeneration.
Yeah, this is the big one.
It is. This is the disease that steals your central vision. It's the very thing allowing you to recognize a loved one's face or, read a book. For anyone who has watched a parent or a grandparent go through this, the historical prognosis has always been incredibly grim.
Historically, yes. A diagnosis of the most common form-dry, age-related macular degeneration was essentially a slow-motion tragedy. The medical community had basically nothing in the arsenal to halt it.
Why was it so untreatable for so long?
To understand that, you have to look at the macula itself. It's a tiny, highly pigmented area near the center of the retina, and it is just densely packed with photoreceptor cells.
Okay.
In dry macular degeneration, a specific process called geographic atrophy happens. The cells in the macula, along with this crucial support layer beneath them, the retinal pigment epithelium, they simply start to thin out and die off.
It's basically like dead pixels in the center of a television screen that just slowly expand outward.
Yeah, as a highly accurate way to visualize it. And for decades, ophthalmologists could really only monitor those expanding dead pixels and prescribe low vision aids.
Right, like magnifying glasses.
Exactly. There was absolutely no way to intervene in the biological mechanism that was actually causing the cell death.
But the source highlights a monumental shift that has just occurred in 2024. The FDA approved the very first drug to treat this exact condition. I mean, the landscape has fundamentally changed here.
It's a massive leap. We're talking about a medication called pegcetacoplan.
Right, which is hitting the market under the brand name Syfove. Going from a disease with zero treatments in human history to having an approved therapeutic, that's incredible. What is the actual mechanism here? How does it stop those dead pixels from expanding?
Well, to understand Syfove, we have to look at why the cells are dying in the first place. The source points toward an overactive immune response.
Wait, really? The immune system?
Yeah, your immune system has this complex network of proteins called the complement system. It's an ancient evolutionary defense mechanism. It's designed to attack pathogens and clear out damaged cells.
Okay, that sounds like a good thing.
Usually it is. But in dry macular degeneration, a specific part of this system, which is driven by a protein known as C3, goes completely rogue, becomes hyperactive, and starts attacking the healthy cells of your own macula.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that accelerates that geographic atrophy we just talked about.
So it's essentially an autoimmune-like friendly fire scenario happening right at the back of the eye?
Effectively, yes. So pegcetacoplan is a targeted C3 inhibitor. It binds to that specific complement protein and just shuts down the overactive cascade.
I see. So it acts as a highly specific biological bridge.
Exactly.
Okay.
It intercepts the signal before the immune system can destroy the macular tissue. Clinical trials showed it significantly slowed the growth of those dead pixel lesions. We haven't cured the disease, but we have finally figured out how to freeze the battlefield.
That is an incredible triumph of pharmacology. But, the core philosophy of the ultimate human protocol isn't just about waiting until your immune system goes rogue and then injecting a drug to stop it.
No, not at all.
Right.
The true biohacking approach is pushing the timeline way back.
Right. It's about engineering your biology so the degeneration never initiates in the first place.
Proactive defense is always superior to reactive damage control. Always. And the most heavily validated preventative defense we have against macular degeneration is nutritional.
And the source is extremely specific here. It points directly to the AOREDS 2 formula. If you are listening and taking notes, this is the blueprint you really want to pay attention to.
Definitely write this down.
The source stresses that you cannot just grab a generic daily multivitamin and expect it to protect your macula. It has to be this exact clinical combination. So let me read it. 500 milligrams of vitamin C, 400 international units of vitamin E, 80 milligrams of zinc, 2 milligrams of copper, 10 milligrams of lutein, and 2 milligrams of zeaxanthin.
That's the stack.
What makes this exact ratio the gold standard?
The clinical validation behind it is just staggering. The age-related eye disease studies, AREDS, and the subsequent AREDS 2, there were these massive multi-center long-term trials sponsored by the National Eye Institute.
So they weren't messing around.
Not at all. They weren't testing abstract theories. They were measuring hard visual outcomes over years. And the data revealed that taking this precise stack of antioxidants and minerals reduces the risk of moderate macular degeneration progressing to the advanced vision loss stage by roughly 25%.
25% risk reduction just from optimizing specific micronutrients. That's huge. How does a combination of vitamins and the few milligrams of plant pigments actually pull that off biologically?
Let's focus on the two most crucial components of that stack, lutein and zeaxanthin. If you've been in the biohacking or longevity space, you probably know these are carotenoids.
Right.
But what's critical is what they do inside the eye. When you ingest them, your body actively transports them directly to the retina, and they heavily concentrate in the macula. They literally form a dense, yellow pigmented layer right over the central vision cells.
The source describes them as internal sunglasses?
It's the perfect metaphor. This macular pigment optical density acts as a physical biological shield. It absorbs the high-energy, short-wavelength blue light before it can even strike the delicate photoreceptors.
Because that blue light is dangerous.
Right. Very. Blue light creates massive amounts of reactive oxygen species. Those are free radicals that just tear through cell membranes and damage mitochondrial DNA. By absorbing the light and neutralizing the free radicals, lutein and zeaxanthin prevent the oxidative stress that ultimately triggers the immune system to start that geographic atrophy.
Okay, so the ARDS2 supplement is clearly powerful, but the source introduces a major caveat here regarding how we actually source these nutrients. It claims that getting these carotenoids from whole foods can actually be vastly superior to just swallowing the synthetic pill version.
Yes, this is a huge point.
But if the molecule is the same, why does the delivery method matter so much?
It all comes down to a concept called bioavailability and lipid cofactors. A carotenoid in isolation, just inside a dry gelatin capsule, is actually very difficult for the human digestive tract to absorb. Carotenoids are fat-soluble.
Ah, so taking a dry lutein pill on an empty stomach is basically just creating expensive urine.
Or expensive fecal matter, to be precise. The body just passes it right through. The source specifically highlights foods like kale, spinach, collard greens, egg yolks, corn, and orange peppers. Let's look at the egg yolk for a second.
Okay.
An egg yolk contains lutein and zeaxanthin, sure, but it also contains a matrix of natural cholesterol, phospholipids, and dietary fats. When that hits your digestive tract, the fats trigger the release of bile.
Right.
The bile then emulsifies the fats and the carotenoids together into these microscopic spheres called micelles. And those are easily absorbed through the intestinal wall and shuttled directly into the bloodstream. Nature essentially packages the nutrient with its own optimal delivery mechanism.
That completely reframes how to look at nutrition. You aren't just eating the building blocks, you have to eat the transport system too.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of environmental interactions, I want to bring up a really fascinating contradiction in the source material regarding sunlight.
Oh, the UV paradox.
Yes. The host of The Ultimate Human talks extensively about the dangers of UV light. The recommendation is to wear sunglasses blocking 99 to 100% of UVA and UVB radiation, specifically wraparound styles so the light doesn't leak in from the sides.
Right, to protect the macula.
But then, almost immediately, the source advocates for deliberate, unprotected morning sunlight exposure to the eyes. How do we reconcile that? Is UV light a toxic hazard or a biological necessity?
Well, it is both. And this paradox is one of the most elegant examples of how circadian biology relies on environmental timing. The distinction really comes down to the angle of the sun, the thickness of the atmosphere, and the specific spectrum of light hitting your retina.
Okay, so break down the morning exposure. Why is looking at the sunrise beneficial when staring at the sun at noon will literally burn a hole in your vision?
In the first hour after sunrise, the sun is at a very low solar angle, right?
Yeah.
So the light has to travel obliquely through a massive cross-section of the Earth's atmosphere. This thick layer of atmosphere effectively scatters and filters out the vast majority of the highly energetic, tissue-damaging UVB radiation. What successfully penetrates and reaches your eye is a specific, safe ratio of blue and near-infrared light.
And the eye is specifically designed to catch that exact morning spectrum.
Precisely. You have these specialized cells in your retina called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, or IPRGCs.
That's a mouthful.
It is. But their entire job is not to form images. They act as light meters. When that unfiltered, low-angle morning light hits them, they send an electrical signal directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your hypothalamus.
Which is your brain's master clock.
Exactly.
So taking off the sunglasses in the morning is literally setting the biological clock for the day.
It signals the brain to halt the production of melatonin, which is the sleep hormone, and it triggers a spike in healthy cortisol and dopamine. It wakes up your metabolism, synchronizes the cellular clocks in your liver and your gut, and optimally prepares your body for daytime function.
Wow.
If you wear dark sunglasses during this critical morning window, you are essentially tricking your brain into thinking you are still living in a dim cave. You blunt that entire crucial hormonal cascade.
But then the environment changes as the day progresses. The sun gets higher, the atmospheric filter thins out, and the UV intensity just skyrockets.
Right. Midday sun delivers a torrent of UVA and UVB radiation, and the source emphasizes a terrifying fact here.
Yeah.
Your eyes do not heal from UV damage the way a sunburn fades from your skin.
Wait, really?
No, the lens of your eye and your retina accumulate UV radiation damage over your entire lifespan. It is a biological ledger that only adds, it never subtracts.
That is horrifying. So the morning light is the specific signal needed to turn on the biological machinery, but the midday glare is essentially a radiation bomb slowly degrading the hardware over decades.
Exactly.
The wraparound sunglasses are the shield against that cumulative, lifelong oxidative stress that leads to cataracts and macular degeneration.
A perfect synthesis. Timing and dosage dictate whether the environment is a medicine or a toxin.
That covers the frontal assault on our central vision. But the source moves on to a completely different type of threat next. If macular degeneration is a direct attack on the center of the television screen, this next condition operates like someone slowly turning down the brightness at the edges until the room just goes dark. We need to explore the stealth mechanics of glaucoma.
Glaucoma is uniquely terrifying because of its complete lack of early warning systems. It is the definition of an insidious disease.
The source points out that you can lose a massive percentage of your peripheral vision before you even realize there is a problem. Like, you could pass a standard visual acuity test reading the tiny letters on the chart perfectly straight ahead while your peripheral awareness is literally dying off. How does the brain mask that kind of structural damage?
Well, the human brain is an incredible prediction engine. Glaucoma is characterized by the progressive death of the retinal ganglion cells.
Those are the nerves.
Right, they're the long nerve fibers that bundle together to form the optic nerve, which carries the visual signal to the brain. In most forms of glaucoma, these nerve fibers begin to die off at the outer edges first.
Okay.
As those peripheral fibers die, blank spots clinically called scotomas form in your peripheral vision, but the brain refuses to perceive empty black space. It hates it, so it uses the visual information from the surrounding healthy tissue to seamlessly fill in the blanks.
It's essentially photoshopping reality in real time to hide the damage from you.
Exactly. By the time the blind spots merge and encroach enough on your central vision for you to consciously notice the tunnel vision, the optic nerve damage is severe and completely irreversible. You just cannot regrow a dead optic nerve.
So early detection and intervention are the absolute only defense. And traditionally, the mechanism driving this nerve death is elevated intraocular pressure. The source presents a major paradigm shift in how we treat this pressure buildup, referencing new protocols from the National Eye Institute.
Yeah, for decades, the standard of care for newly diagnosed primary open-angle glaucoma was automatic. The doctor would hand the patient a prescription for pressure-lowering eye drops and tell them to use them daily for the rest of their lives.
But the data in the source shows that laser therapy is now proven safe and highly effective as a first-line option.
It's a huge shift.
The source references a 6-year clinical study demonstrating that a specific laser treatment preserves vision better than daily eye drops. It offers superior long-term outcomes without the systemic side effects. Let's dig into the why here. Why is zapping the eye with a laser fundamentally better than simply applying a medicated drop?
To understand the superiority of the laser, we need to understand the actual plumbing of the eye. Think of the eye as a sink.
Okay, a sink.
There is a faucet constantly producing fluid called the aqueous humor, which nourishes the internal structures. And there is a drain called the trabecular meshwork, located right at the angle where the iris meets the cornea.
Got it.
In open-angle glaucoma, the faucet works fine, but the drain gets sluggish. It clogs up on a microscopic level. So the fluid backs up, the pressure inside the eye rises, and that mechanical pressure slowly crushes the delicate optic nerve at the back of the eye.
So the eye drops are either trying to turn down the faucet or chemically force the drain open.
Correct. But the drops require flawless human compliance. The patient must remember to instill the drops perfectly every single day, often multiple times a day.
And people just don't do that.
No. As the source explicitly points out, medication adherence rates for asymptomatic conditions like glaucoma are notoriously abysmal.
Right, because if you don't feel sick, you forget your medicine.
Exactly. And the drops themselves can cause severe dry eye, stinging, profound redness, or even changes in eye color. Because the patient feels no pain from the high pressure itself, they often skip the uncomfortable drops. The pressure silently spikes, and the nerve takes another hit.
So the human behavioral flaw ruins the medical intervention.
Exactly. The laser therapy, specifically selective laser trabeculoplasty, or SLT, removes the human error entirely. The ophthalmologist uses a highly targeted low-energy laser to deliver microscopic pulses of light directly to the clogged trabecular meshwork.
Wait, does the laser burn a new hole in the drain to let the fluid out?
That's the genius of SLT. It doesn't rely on thermal destruction. The energy level is so low that it doesn't burn or scar the tissue at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, instead, the laser energy is absorbed by the pigmented cells in the drain, triggering an intracellular biological response. It essentially recruits the body's own immune macrophages to the area to clean out the microscopic debris and remodel the drainage tissue.
That's amazing.
It biologically rejuvenates the drain, restoring natural outflow and lowering the pressure around the plaque without relying on the patient remembering a bottle of drops.
It's repairing the infrastructure rather than just treating the symptom. Now, what if you don't have a glaucoma diagnosis yet, but you want to ensure that pressure never builds up?
Prevention is key.
The source takes a deep dive into the lifestyle interventions that manipulate intraocular pressure on a daily basis. The eye isn't an isolated bubble. It's a hydraulic system hooked into your body's overall hemodynamics.
Everything you do physically affects that pressure dynamic. And the source highlights a fascinating paradox when it comes to exercise. We all know exercise is universally good, but when it comes to optic nerve health, the type of exertion matters profoundly.
The source states that regular, moderate aerobic activity actively reduces eye pressure and improves blood flow to the optic nerve. But then it immediately warns that vigorous, heavy exertion can trigger dangerous pressure spikes. Where is the line between therapeutic movement and optic nerve damage?
It comes down to systemic blood pressure and a physiological mechanism known as the Valsalva maneuver.
The Valsalva maneuver, okay.
Moderate aerobic exercise like jogging, cycling, swimming enhances your cardiovascular efficiency. It causes mild, sustained vasodilation, which improves the perfusion of oxygenated blood directly to the optic nerve.
It's great.
Yes. Simultaneously, the aerobic movement subtly enhances the fluid dynamics of the whole body, which helps pull aqueous fluid through that trabecular meshwork drain, naturally lowering the intraocular pressure.
But heavy lifting breaks that dynamic.
Completely. Think about a heavy barbell deadlift or a max effort leg press. To stabilize your spine, you take a deep breath and bear down, closing your glottis and straining. That is the Valsalva maneuver.
Right, you're creating internal pressure to lift the weight.
Yes, and it causes an instantaneous massive spike in intrathoracic pressure inside your chest, which immediately translates up the jugular veins into a massive spike in intracranial and intraocular pressure.
So the fluid pressure inside the eye violently surges.
Exactly. The eye pressure can easily double or triple in that single second of straining. For a young, healthy optic nerve, it can handle that transient stress. But if a patient has a vulnerable optic nerve, thin corneas or borderline glaucoma, repeatedly subjecting the eye to those violent hydraulic spikes can really accelerate nerve damage.
Wow.
This is why the source advocates for consistent, moderate aerobic conditioning over extreme breath-holding exertion for long-term vision preservation.
That physiological breakdown makes perfect sense. Now, here is a variable I never would have considered before reading the source material: your pillow. The source states that simply elevating your head during sleep reduces nighttime pressure elevations. How significant is gravity when we are talking about microscopic fluid dynamics in the eye?
Gravity is a massive, relentless variable. When you're standing or sitting throughout the day, gravity naturally assists the venous drainage from your head and neck back down to your heart. This helps pull fluid out of the eye. But when you lie completely flat for 8 hours a night, that gravitational assistance disappears.
The fluid redistributes. The pressure in the head equalizes with the rest of the body.
Yes. The episcleral venous pressure, the pressure in the tiny veins just outside the eye that receive the fluid from the trabecular drain, increases when you are supine. Because the downstream pressure is higher, it is harder for the aqueous fluid to exit the eye. Consequently, intraocular pressure naturally rises for every human being at night.
And the source notes this nocturnal spike is the hidden culprit behind normal tension glaucoma.
All right, normal tension glaucoma is a baffling condition where the optic nerve progressively dies, yet every time the patient visits the eye doctor during the day, their eye pressure measures perfectly normal.
Because the damage is happening in the dark.
Exactly. They go home, lie flat on their back, and the loss of gravity causes their pressure to spike into the danger zone for 8 hours straight while they sleep. By simply using a wedge pillow to elevate the head by 20 to 30 degrees, you reintroduce enough gravitational pull to maintain healthy drainage and protect the nerve all night long.
It is an incredibly elegant, low-tech biohack, but we can't ignore the biochemical side of the pressure equation. The source brings up chronic stress and specific dietary interventions. It states that chronic stress elevates eye pressure via nervous system activation and hormonal pathways. How does a stressful email translate to physical pressure inside the eyeball?
It is driven by the sympathetic nervous system. When you are under chronic psychological stress, your body is locked in a low-grade fight-or-flight response. Your adrenal glands pump out cortisol and catecholamines like adrenaline.
And those affect the blood vessels.
Yes, these stress hormones are potent vasoconstrictors. They cause the blood vessels throughout your body to tighten.
And that includes the microscopic vessels feeding the eye and the drainage network.
Precisely. The vasoconstriction reduces the vital blood flow to the optic nerve, starving it of oxygen and making it much more vulnerable to damage. Furthermore, the stress hormones can actually alter the physical tone and resistance of the trabecular meshwork itself, making the drain stiffer and less efficient, causing the internal pressure to climb.
To counter this, the source lists specific dietary tools: green tea, omega-3 fatty acids, and nitrate-rich vegetables. It frames these not as overnight cures, but as compounds that exert cumulative, lifelong pressure-lowering effects.
The mechanism of action for nitrates is particularly fascinating. When you consume dietary nitrates from sources like beets, arugula, or spinach, your oral microbiome and body convert those nitrates into nitric oxide.
Okay, nitric oxide.
Nitric oxide is a master signaling molecule that tells the smooth muscle in your blood vessels to relax. It is a powerful vasodilator.
So it directly opposes the vasoconstriction caused by the stress hormones.
Exactly. It opens up the microscopic vessels, feeding the optic nerve, improving oxygen delivery, and it helps relax the drainage tissues, subtly improving the outflow of fluid.
That's a great defense.
Combine that with the profound anti-inflammatory effects of omega-3s on the drainage pathways and the potent neuroprotective antioxidants found in green tea, and you are building a biological environment that actively resists pressure buildup day after day, year after year.
We have spent a lot of time on the severe sight-threatening diseases, the degeneration of the macula, and the crushing of the optic nerve. But the source material pivots aggressively to a condition it claims affects nearly everyone at some point, one that can utterly destroy your daily quality of life and productivity. We need to dissect the dry eye epidemic.
Calling it an epidemic is clinically accurate. The sheer volume of patients suffering from chronic ocular surface disease is just staggering, and it is directly tied to our environment.
The source does something crucial here. It breaks dry eye down into two distinct mechanical failures. This is vital because it explains why so many people buy generic, over-the-counter artificial tears, put them in, and find zero relief 10 minutes later.
Right, because they are treating the wrong problem.
Exactly. The source defines aqueous-deficient dry eye and evaporative dry eye. Walk us through the physiological difference between the two.
Aqueous-deficient dry eye is relatively straightforward. It is an underproduction failure. Your lacrimal glands, which are located just above the outer corner of each eye, are the primary factories for the watery component of your tears.
Okay.
In certain autoimmune conditions, or just due to severe aging, these glands undergo fibrosis or atrophy. They simply cannot physically pump out enough liquid volume to maintain the tear lake on the surface of the eye.
It's a fundamental lack of fluid, a literal drought.
Exactly. But the second type, evaporative dry eye, accounts for the vast majority of cases in the modern world, and its mechanism is entirely different. You can have perfectly healthy lacrimal glands pumping out massive amounts of watery tears, but if you have evaporative dry eye, your eyes will still feel like sandpaper.
Because tears are not just salt water.
Correct. The human tear film is a highly complex three-layered structure. The innermost layer is mucin, which sticks the tear to the eye. The thick middle layer is the aqueous water, but the outermost layer, the critical field, is a microscopic slick of oil.
Oil. Really?
Yes, this oil is produced by dozens of tiny vertical glands lining the upper and lower eyelids, called the meibomian glands.
And the oil acts as the seal.
It creates a lipid barrier that traps the aqueous water against the cornea and prevents it from turning into vapor. In evaporative dry eye, which is clinically called meibomian gland dysfunction, these tiny oil glands become inflamed.
What happens to the oil?
The clear, olive oil-like secretion turns into a thick, cloudy paste, almost like hardened toothpaste. The glands clog up, and the oil layer disappears from the tear film.
Oh, that sounds awful. So without that micro-thin layer of oil, the watery tears just instantly flash evaporate into the surrounding air.
Instantly. You blink, the water's exposed to the air, and it's gone in seconds. Your eye responds by pouring out more watery tears, which is why people with severe evaporative dry eye paradoxically complain of their eyes constantly watering.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. But because there is no oil to trap the moisture, the cornea is left exposed, irritated, and inflamed.
Understanding that mechanical failure of the oil glands makes the cutting-edge interventions detailed in the source so much more logical. If the glands are blocked with hardened, inflamed paste, an over-the-counter saline drop does absolutely nothing to fix the root cause. It's just throwing water on a hot skillet. The source details interventions that sound like they belong in a dermatology clinic, not an eye doctor's office. For instance, intense pulse light therapy, or IPL. The source states it targets abnormal blood vessels and improves oil gland function via visible and infrared light. How does flashing bright light at the skin fix a clogged oil gland in the eyelid?
Well, IPLs is a brilliant cross-application of technology. When the meibomian glands are chronically clogged, the surrounding eyelid tissue becomes highly inflamed. The body responds to this inflammation by growing tiny, abnormal, leaky blood vessels along the eyelid margins.
Like rosacea, almost.
Yes, clinically it's a form of ocular rosacea. It's a condition called telangiectasia. These abnormal vessels constantly leak inflammatory cytokines and mediators directly into the oil glands, degrading the quality of the oil and perpetuating the blockage.
It's a vicious inflammatory feedback loop.
Exactly. IPL breaks the loop. The device delivers specific wavelengths of intense light that are highly absorbed by the hemoglobin in those abnormal, leaky blood vessels.
Ah, so it targets the blood.
Right. The light energy converts to heat, essentially cauterizing and closing off those inflammatory superhighways. Simultaneously, the broad-spectrum thermal energy from the flash deeply penetrates the eyelid tissue, melting the hardened, toothpaste-like meibum trapped inside the glands, allowing it to flow naturally again.
So it shuts off the inflammatory supply line and melts the blockage at the exact same time.
It's highly effective.
The source also mentions red light therapy, noting its beneficial effects on cellular function, which tracks with Gary Brecka's overarching biohacking protocols regarding mitochondrial efficiency. But then the source outlines a device called LipiFlow.
LipiFlow is a highly specialized piece of hardware engineered to address the mechanical blockage directly. It involves placing a medical-grade activator piece over and under the eyelids.
Okay, that sounds intense.
It applies highly precise, automated thermal pulsation. It heats the meibomian glands from the inside out to the exact melting point of the hardened oil, which is around 42.5 degrees Celsius, while simultaneously applying a gentle, rhythmic peristaltic massage to physically express the melted debris out of the glands.
It's a microscopic deep tissue massage and thermal extraction for your eyelids.
That is the exact mechanical reality.
But of all the interventions discussed in the source, this next one is the most radical. For severe, intractable cases of ocular surface disease, the source details the use of autologous serum tears. Let's make sure I'm grasping this correctly. The protocol is to draw a patient's own blood and manufacture custom eye drops out of it.
You are grasping it perfectly. It is the pinnacle of personalized regenerative medicine for the eye.
Wait, why in the world is blood serum superior to the most advanced chemically engineered artificial tear from a pharmaceutical lab?
Because a pharmaceutical lab can only synthesize lubrication. An artificial tear is essentially saline, a preservative, and a viscosity agent like hyaluronic acid. It provides temporary mechanical relief.
Right.
But a natural, healthy human basal tear is not just a lubricant. It is an immensely complex biological fluid packed with neurotrophic factors, vitamins, antibodies, and specialized proteins that constantly actively heal, nourish, and repair the delicate epithelial cells on the surface of the cornea.
So when a patient has severe dry eye, their cornea isn't just dry, it is biologically starving and structurally damaged.
Precisely. The surface cells begin to slough off, exposing the sensitive nerve endings, which causes excruciating pain. To heal that damage, the eye requires those specific biological growth factors. And as it turns out, the clear serum component of human blood contains a biochemical profile that is remarkably similar to natural human tears.
That is wild.
It contains epidermal growth factor, transforming growth factor beta, fibronectin, and vitamin A, all naturally suspended in your own unique biological signature.
So the process involves drawing the blood.
Right, a phlebotomist draws your blood, and the vials are placed in a centrifuge. The extreme spinning forces the heavy red and white blood cells to the bottom, leaving the golden, nutrient-dense serum at the top. The pharmacy extracts that serum, dilutes it precisely with sterile saline, and bottles it into individual vials.
Wow.
When you install a drop of your own serum onto your damaged cornea, you aren't just wetting it, you are bathing the injured cells in the exact raw biological materials they require to regenerate and heal. Because it's your own DNA, there is zero risk of rejection or allergic reaction.
That is biohacking at its absolute finest, harnessing the body's systemic resources to heal an isolated failure. But the source material immediately brings us back to the foundational daily nutritional protocols required to maintain the tear film before you ever need your blood spun in a centrifuge. And for evaporative dry eye, the spotlight lands squarely on omega-3 fatty acids.
Omega-3s are the non-negotiable structural foundation for a healthy lipid layer. The source recommends 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA daily.
The source makes a specific distinction here regarding sourcing, noting that marine sources generally provide superior bioavailability, but highlighting high-quality algae supplements for plant-based diets. Why are EPA and DHA so critical for the oil glands?
Because you are literally what you eat at a molecular level. The meibomian glands synthesize the oil for your tears directly from the fatty acids circulating in your bloodstream.
So if you eat garbage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If your diet is dominated by highly processed seed oils and omega-6s, the glands will produce a thick, pro-inflammatory, highly viscous sebum that easily clogs. But if you saturate your system with high-quality omega-3s, EPA, and DHA, they incorporate into the gland membranes.
And what does that do?
They radically improve the fluidity and the melting point of the oil, ensuring it spreads into a thin, perfectly smooth anti-evaporative shield across the eye. Furthermore, omega-3s act systemically to downregulate the inflammatory pathways that cause those leaky blood vessels we discussed earlier.
The source also flags vitamin A, which makes sense given its role in cellular differentiation, particularly for the goblet cells in the eye that produce the mucin layer. But the nutrient connection that I found the most profoundly ironic in the entire source material is the link to vitamin D3.
Oh, the sunshine vitamin connection to dry eye is a relatively new, highly compelling area of clinical research.
The source points out that vitamin D3 deficiency is strongly correlated with dry eye disease, and that systemic supplementation demonstrably improves tear film stability and reduces ocular inflammation. But think about the evolutionary irony here.
Right.
We evolved outdoors. Our skin utilizes UV radiation from the sun to synthesize vitamin D. That vitamin D circulates systemically to regulate our immune function. So our eyes literally rely on a compound generated by the sun to maintain the hydration and immune defense required to protect themselves.
It is a stunning biological feedback loop. The environment provides the stressor, but also provides the mechanism for resilience. When sunlight hits your skin, the synthesized vitamin D3 travels to the liver and kidneys, converting into its active steroid hormone form.
Okay.
This hormone binds to receptors throughout the body, including the tissue of the lacrimal glands and the ocular surface. It modulates the local immune response, actively suppressing the inflammatory cytokines that degrade tear production.
But in the modern world, we break the loop. We spend 90% of our lives indoors, hiding from the sun, slathered in sunscreen, staring at digital screens in artificially conditioned air. We are systematically starving our bodies of the systemic hormones required to protect our eyes, while simultaneously subjecting our eyes to unprecedented behavioral stress.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Which brings us to the environmental trap that neutralizes even the healthiest tear film. We need to build the eye armor routine to survive the digital environment.
This is where we transition from systemic biology to behavioral mechanics. Because, as we established, you can have the most perfectly formulated omega-3 rich tear film in the world. But if you do not mechanically spread it across the surface of the eye, it is useless.
And the screen is the ultimate mechanical saboteur. Let's return to that staggering statistic from the source. Your blink rate decreases by more than 50% when interacting with a digital screen. Why does a backlit monitor override a fundamental autonomic reflex?
The visual demands of a digital screen are completely unprecedented in human evolutionary history. When you are reading a dense email, parsing data on a spreadsheet, or playing a fast-paced video game, your visual cortex requires continuous, uninterrupted data streams to process the information.
Right, you have to concentrate.
To accommodate that immense cognitive load, the brain actively suppresses the neural circuits that trigger the blink reflex.
It views a blink as a momentary blackout, a loss of vital data, so it forces the eye to stay open.
Exactly. But the collateral damage of that data prioritization is devastating to the ocular surface. And to make matters worse, the source notes that when you finally do blink while staring at a screen, it is almost always a microblink.
Explain the mechanics of a microblink.
A full, healthy blink requires the upper eyelid to sweep all the way down and make firm contact with the lower eyelid. This physical contact acts like a squeegee, milking fresh oil out of the meibomian glands and dragging a smooth, unbroken sheet of moisture across the entire cornea.
But during screen use?
The upper eyelid only comes down halfway. It flutters and retracts. The bottom third of your cornea, the inferior zone, never gets resurfaced. It is left completely exposed to the air for hours on end, leading to localized cellular desiccation and severe burning pain.
So we have identified the mechanical failure. The source provides the foundational behavioral intervention to counter it, the 20-20-20 rule. For anyone who hasn't heard this, the protocol is every 20 minutes, you must look at an object at least 20 feet away for a minimum of 20 seconds.
Are you actually doing this right now? Listeners, check yourselves.
Seriously, it sounds almost aggressively simple. How does shifting your gaze out a window reverse the damage of a microblink?
The 20-20-20 rule is not just about taking a break. It is a highly specific biomechanical reset for the internal musculature of the eye. Inside your eye, encircling the crystalline lens, is the ciliary muscle. Its sole function is a process called accommodation.
Okay.
When you look at something far away, the muscle relaxes, pulling the suspensory ligaments tight, which flattens the lens for distance vision.
But when you look at a phone screen 12 inches from your face,
The ciliary muscle must contract violently. It thickens, releasing the tension on the ligaments, allowing the lens to bulge into a spherical shape to focus the incoming light from the close-up object onto the retina. When you stare at a screen for 2 hours, that ciliary muscle is locked in a state of tetanic contraction.
oh wow.
It is the physiological equivalent of holding a heavy dumbbell halfway through a bicep curl and refusing to put it down.
And the muscle simply exhausts itself.
It leads to profound accommodative spasm and visual fatigue, which manifests as that deep aching pain behind the eyes and frontal headaches. The distance of 20 feet in the protocol is not arbitrary.
Why 20 feet?
In human optics, 20 feet is considered optical infinity. At that distance, the light rays entering the eye are essentially parallel. The ciliary muscle is allowed to completely disengage and return to its baseline resting state.
So the 20 seconds of staring at the far wall breaks the muscular spasm.
It breaks the spasm, but, crucially, breaking your gaze from the screen also releases the cognitive lock on your autonomic nervous system. During those 20 seconds, your blink rate naturally rebounds. You will subconsciously execute several full, complete blinks, engaging the meibomian glands and completely resurfacing the parched cornea with fresh lipids and aqueous fluid.
The source even takes it a step further, advocating for conscious, forceful blinking exercises. The host of the source material acknowledges it sounds ridiculous to sit at your desk and forcefully squeeze your eyes shut, but the physics demand it.
You have to do it.
If the microblinks are starving the glands, you have to deliberately flex the orbicularis oculi muscle to squeeze the oil out.
It is a deliberate behavioral hack to compensate for the screen suppression of your natural reflexes.
Let's expand this armor routine to the physical environment. The source details several ergonomic and environmental tweaks that fundamentally alter the evaporation rate of your tears. First, screen positioning. The protocol dictates the monitor should be 20 to 26 inches away and, crucially, positioned slightly below eye level. Why does the vertical angle of the monitor matter to the tear film?
It is pure geometry and surface area. Think about the physical mechanics of looking up. If your monitor is mounted high, your upper eyelids have to maximally retract to clear your visual axis. This exposes the maximum possible surface area of your globe to the surrounding air.
You are creating a larger evaporation zone.
Exactly. More exposed surface area means a faster rate of tear loss. Conversely, if you position the monitor so the top edge is at or slightly below your horizontal eye level, you naturally assume a slightly downward gaze.
Oh, that's clever.
Right. To look down, your upper eyelids must droop, naturally covering the top third of your eye. You instantly reduce the exposed surface area by 30 to 40%, dramatically conserving your tear film without changing anything else in your environment.
That is an incredibly elegant, immediate fix. The source also emphasizes balanced room lighting, warning against staring at a bright monitor in a dark room.
That addresses the pupillary sphincter muscle. If the screen is glaringly bright and the periphery of the room is pitch black, your pupil is caught in a neurological tug-of-war.
How so?
The bright central light commands the pupil to constrict to protect the retina, but the dark periphery commands the pupil to dilate to gather more light. The constant microfluctuations rapidly exhaust the iris musculature, contributing heavily to digital eye strain. Balancing the ambient lighting smooths out the contrast ratio, allowing the pupil to find a stable resting diameter.
And we cannot ignore the actual air surrounding the screen. The source highlights the devastating impact of modern HVAC systems. Low humidity, blasted air conditioning, and forced air heating act like a wind tunnel over the cornea, exponentially accelerating the evaporation of whatever tears you manage to produce.
Evaporation is driven by the vapor pressure gradient between the surface of the eye and the surrounding air. If the ambient air is stripped of moisture by an air conditioner, the gradient is steep and water is rapidly ripped from the tear film.
So what's the fix?
Introducing a desktop humidifier actively alters the microclimate around your face. By increasing the ambient humidity, you flatten the vapor pressure gradient, physically slowing the rate at which your tears vanish.
The source rounds out the environmental protocols with sleep hygiene, highlighting that 7 to 9 hours of sleep is non-negotiable for tear production and cellular repair. But the actionable biohack here is the evening lid hygiene routine, applying a heated compress followed by a gentle massage.
After 16 hours of incomplete blinking and screen exposure, the meibomian glands are under immense stress. The oils can begin to stagnate and cool. Applying a warm compress, specifically sustained heat around 40 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes, melts the stagnant meibum.
And then the massage.
Following that with a gentle, rolling massage from the base of the eyelid toward the lash line, physically evacuates the daily debris, ensuring the glands are clear and fully functional for the next morning.
All right, we have optimized the environment and the mechanical behaviors. Now we need to finalize the internal chemistry. The source concludes with a rapid-fire masterclass on specific eye nutrition. We've discussed the ARDIS2 blueprint and omega-3s, but let's dive into the mechanisms of the remaining micronutrients highlighted in the text to complete our systemic armor.
Let's do it.
We established that lutein and zeaxanthin act as the internal blue light sunglasses. But the source adds a performance layer here. It states that optimal levels of these carotenoids, 10 milligrams of lutein, 2 milligrams of zeaxanthin, directly correlate with improved contrast sensitivity, reduced glare visibility, and actually increased visual processing speed.
This is fascinating stuff.
How do plant pigments speed up the brain's processing of visual data?
It has to do with signal-to-noise ratio. When high-energy blue light scatters inside the eye, it creates visual noise or glare. It degrades the sharpness of the image hitting the retina. By thickly packing the macula with these yellow pigments, you aggressively filter out that scattering blue light.
Okay, so a clearer picture.
The image projected onto the photoreceptors is significantly sharper, with higher contrast. Because the optical signal being transmitted down the optic nerve is cleaner and less degraded, the visual cortex in the brain requires less computational time to decipher the image. Your reaction time and processing speed literally improve because the hardware is transmitting a higher fidelity signal.
That is profound. The nutrition is actually upgrading the processing software. Next, the source pairs vitamin C and vitamin E. It states vitamin C maintains high concentrations in the aqueous fluid to prevent oxidative damage, while vitamin E specifically protects the cellular membranes throughout the eye tissues.
They are the ultimate synergistic antioxidant team. The eye is constantly bombarded by photons, which inevitably generate highly reactive, tissue-destroying free radicals. Vitamin C is water-soluble. It patrols the aqueous fluid, neutralizing free radicals in the open spaces.
And vitamin E?
Vitamin E is fat-soluble. It integrates directly into the lipid bilayers of the cell membranes. When a free radical attempts to puncture a retinal cell membrane, vitamin E intercepts and neutralizes it. But in doing so, the vitamin E molecule itself becomes oxidized and depleted.
So it sacrifices itself.
Exactly. But then vitamin C swoops in, donates an electron, and chemically recycles the vitamin E back to its active protective state. They form an endless loop of cellular defense.
The source then brings up beta-carotene, highlighting its specific role in forming rhodopsin, which is the protein required for low-light adaptation.
Rhodopsin is the biological marvel of night vision. It is the highly light-sensitive receptor protein packed into the rod cells of your retina. When a single photon of light hits a rhodopsin molecule in a dark room, the molecule instantly changes its physical shape, triggering an electrical cascade that tells your brain, hey, I see light.
But that uses it up.
Yes, that reaction destroys the rhodopsin molecule. It must be continuously rebuilt. Beta-carotene is the precursor to vitamin A, which provides the retinal backbone required to synthesize new rhodopsin. Without it, you experience night blindness. The biological machinery to see in the dark simply cannot be assembled.
Which brings us to a critical linchpin in this entire nutritional matrix: zinc. The source is emphatic here, stating that the vast majority of the population is deficient in zinc. It notes that zinc is absolutely essential for retinal enzyme function and the metabolism of that vitamin A we just discussed. The implication is that without zinc, the whole system grinds to a halt.
Zinc is the metabolic bottleneck. You could consume massive amounts of beta-carotene and vitamin A, but it would be useless without zinc.
Why?
Vitamin A is stored in the liver. To transport it through the bloodstream to the retina, it must be bound to a specific carrier protein called retinol binding protein. The synthesis of that carrier protein in the liver is entirely dependent on zinc.
Wow, okay.
If you are deficient in zinc, the vitamin A remains trapped in the liver, and the retina slowly starves, leading to severe night blindness and a degradation of color discrimination. Furthermore, the highest concentration of zinc in the entire human body is found in the retina and the choroid of the eye, where it acts as a structural cofactor for the antioxidant enzymes attempting to protect the macula.
The systemic interconnectedness is breathtaking. A mineral deficiency in the gut stops protein synthesis in the liver, which destroys night vision in the eye. Finally, the source mentions selenium, required to activate antioxidant enzymes like glutathione peroxidase, and copper, which is essential for synthesizing the collagen proteins that maintain the structural integrity of the cornea and the scleral eye wall.
And critically, whenever you supplement heavily with zinc, you must also supplement with copper, as high doses of zinc can block the intestinal absorption of copper, leading to a secondary deficiency. The source recognizes this delicate balance, which is why the ARDS2 formula meticulously includes both.
And to anchor all of this highly technical biochemistry back to reality, the source reiterates that the optimal way to ingest these compounds is through a whole food matrix, getting those essential omega-3s from wild-caught fatty fish like salmon or tuna 2 to 3 times a week, or prioritizing walnuts, soybeans, flax seeds, and chia seeds to provide the lipid cofactors necessary to absorb the lutein and zeaxanthin.
The protocol isn't about isolating a single magical molecule in a lab. It is about feeding the complex biological machinery of the eye the exact evolutionary raw materials it expects, allowing it to continuously repair and regenerate itself despite the harshness of the modern environment.
Which provides the perfect transition into the final phase of our discussion. So what does this all mean? When we step back from the specific milligrams of zinc, the mechanics of a meibomian gland, and the fluid dynamics of glaucoma, what is the ultimate core philosophy we are extracting from this ultimate human source material?
The core philosophy is the total rejection of biological isolation. Western medicine often treats the eye as if it were a detached camera bolted onto the front of the skull. If the lens is cloudy, replace the lens. If the pressure is high, put a drop in the camera.
Right.
But the source material, driven by Gary Brecka's biohacking framework, forces us to recognize that the eye is a highly vascularized, densely innervated extension of the brain itself. It is deeply embedded within and entirely reliant upon your systemic biological health.
Your vision is the downstream result of your upstream lifestyle choices.
Precisely. Your sleep architecture, your chronic cortisol levels, your insulin sensitivity, your gut microbiome's ability to absorb nutrients. Every single choice you make sends a cascading biological signal that ultimately dictates the cellular health of your retina and your optic nerve.
To fully represent the scope of the source material, we have to look at the broader ecosystem Gary Brecka is building around this philosophy. This isn't just an abstract lecture on ophthalmology, it's an actionable call to arms. The source details a comprehensive infrastructure designed to support the systemic lifestyle shift, including a VIP community, live monthly Q&A sessions to troubleshoot specific health protocols, and the 10-month Ultimate Human University aimed at mastering the biological optimization of every phase of the day.
That infrastructure is necessary because aligning your biology with an evolutionary framework requires active, sustained resistance against the conveniences of the modern world. It is incredibly difficult to maintain a diet rich in bioavailable whole foods, perfectly manage your circadian light exposure, and rigidly control your screen time when the entirety of modern society is engineered to push you toward processed food, artificial blue light, and digital addiction.
The community provides the behavioral scaffolding required to maintain the biohacking protocols. And the source provides a fascinating specific example of this systemic biohacking approach in action. It details a free 3-day water fasting challenge occurring October 15th through the 17th, focused on cellular healing, featuring experts like Dr. Paul Saladino, Taylor Dukes, and Dr. G. Offrey. At first glance, a water fasting challenge seems totally disconnected from a deep dive about eye health. But based on everything we've discussed about systemic interconnectedness, the link is actually profound, isn't it?
The link is cellular autophagy, and it is vital for long-term vision preservation. Autophagy is the body's internal recycling program. When you deprive the body of exogenous calories during a prolonged water fast, the cells shift from a state of growth and proliferation into a state of deep conservation and repair.
They realize food is scarce, so they start cleaning house to survive.
Exactly. The cells construct internal structures called lysosomes that actively hunt down and devour damaged proteins, oxidized lipids, and dysfunctional mitochondria. They break this cellular garbage down into raw amino acids and recycle them.
And how does that help the eye?
Apply this to the retina. The photoreceptors in your retina are some of the most metabolically active cells in the human body, but the support cells beneath them, the retinal pigment epithelium, do not divide or replace themselves. Over decades of processing high-energy light, these cells accumulate massive amounts of toxic, oxidized cellular garbage called lipofuscin.
And that accumulation of lipofuscin is a primary driver of the macular degeneration we discussed in part 1.
Precisely. By engaging in a systemic 3-day water fast, you induce a massive spike in autophagy across the entire body, including the retina. You are literally turning on the biological vacuum cleaner, forcing the retinal cells to clear out the toxic lipofuscin debris before it can trigger the immune system to start destroying the macula. A dietary intervention heals the back of the eye.
It all connects. The underlying message of this entire source material isn't just to memorize a supplement list. The message is about systemic alignment. When we force an ancient, finely tuned biological system to operate in a totally alien modern environment, bathed in artificial blue light at midnight, starved of the solar hormones we evolved to rely on, fed highly processed synthetic foods devoid of lipid cofactors, and locked into a visually demanding, blink-suppressing digital reality, the hardware breaks down, and we call that breakdown aging.
But when you actively align your environmental inputs and your behavioral mechanics with your evolutionary biology, you preserve the function of that hardware far into the future.
We have covered massive, highly technical ground today. We started by dismantling the myth that visual decline is just an inevitable tax on time. We explored the historic 2024 pharmacological breakthrough of Savard intercepting the immune system to halt macular degeneration, and the exact ARES2 nutritional blueprint required to build a physical shield against oxidative stress.
We examined the mechanical paradigm shift in glaucoma, moving away from the behavioral failures of eye drops toward the precision of selective laser trabeculoplasty to remodel the eye's internal plumbing.
Right, and we navigated the subtle daily hydraulic variables of intraocular pressure, from the vasodilation of moderate aerobic exercise to the gravitational implications of using a wedge pillow at night.
We decoded the silent epidemic of ocular surface disease, drawing the crucial mechanical distinction between aqueous deficiency and the far more common evaporative failure of the meibomian glands.
We marveled at the science of using intense pulse light to close off inflammatory superhighways and the regenerative pinnacle of using autologous blood serum to rebuild a starving cornea.
And we constructed a comprehensive behavioral and environmental armor protocol to survive the digital age. The biomechanical necessity of the 20-20-20 rule to break ciliary muscle spasm, the physics of screen positioning to reduce evaporative surface area, the critical enzymatic role of zinc in vitamin A transport, and the profound evolutionary irony of the sun, providing the systemic hormones necessary to hydrate the eye. The ultimate takeaway here is profound empowerment. What you do today, the ambient lighting in the room you are sitting in right this second, the bioavailability of the omega-3s on your plate tonight, the exact angle you position your head when you finally go to sleep. These are not minor, inconsequential habits. They are the biological levers that literally dictate your visual independence decades from now. They decide whether you will be reading this text, recognizing faces, and driving your own car in your 80s.
You are not a passive victim of biological decay. Your daily systemic choices are the master control switch for your visual future. So as we wrap up this conversation, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. A question that builds on this entire theme of our modern environment clashing with our ancient biology. If screen time, low humidity, and artificial lighting are quietly tricking our eyes into aging decades faster than they genetically should, if the breakdown is fundamentally an environmental mismatch rather than a failure of time, what other inevitable signs of aging currently happening in your body, the chronic joint pain, the brain fog, the metabolic fatigue, are actually just environmental mismatches waiting for you to identify and fix them?
Once you view your health through the lens of evolutionary alignment, you realize how much control you truly possess.
Thank you for joining us as we unpacked this incredible material. Take control of your environment, protect your vision, and we will see you next time.